FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Today's show is brought to you by Blue Sky Uranium Corporation. Blue Sky has first mover advantage in Argentina in the world's newest uranium and vanadium district. With an existing near-surface deposit that's open for expansion, Blue Sky also controls a massive district-scale land package with mineralization along a 145-kilometer-long trend. Blue Sky possesses tremendous exploration upside and is an excellent leverage play on rising uranium and vanadium prices. The company is run by a best-in-class management and technical team with proven exploration and development success in Argentina. Blue Sky Uranium trades under the ticker symbol BSK on the Toronto Venture Exchange and as BKUCF on the OTC. For more information and to stay on top of the latest news, go to blueskyuranium.com. That's blueskyuranium.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's 4/16/19. That means it's the day after tax day. I hope you've recovered from lifting up that heavy pen and writing that big check. It is your largest expense, taxes, by far and away over every other expense. Certainly, unless you are in the ultra wealthy, and even they're hurting. You're about to hear the Stockholm housing syndrome, the Greenwich housing syndrome. All of these upscale markets are headed down. In Manhattan, too, as well. I was there the past week. Well, without further ado, and before we get started, be a part of the show and write us at kl@kerrylutz.com. A little bit backed up on your emails now, but we'll get to them soon. So Danielle Park is with us. And Danielle, housing, just luxury, high-end housing, looks like it's falling apart across the globe, in Canada, in these go-go markets, in the U.S., in Europe, probably in Asia too. We just don't have that good information. I mean, surprise, surprise, right?
Yeah, it's all the same dynamics. So it's the receding flows from the speculative money that's been put in, now with debt at all-time highs. You know, as Peter Bachvar says, you can't, perpetual monetary easing is no longer accommodative at the point where everyone's already asset heavy and debt heavy, and rates are already near zero. There's really no further expansion of debt can go on. And so that is pushing the affordability of these properties, which have become so grossly inflated over the past many years by these flows, lax policy, speculation, all these things. And as I've pointed out before, the cohort holding these properties tend to be in the older age groups. And it's a natural inclination as we age to want to downsize our maintenance and upkeep and cost, especially if you're needing to bump up your pot of retirement savings because you're at or near it and yields are at all-time lows. So people are having to save more in order to fund their retirement. So it's a natural demographic shift that's happening where people want to downsize expensive housing. And the difficulty is, of course, that some of these properties have doubled and tripled in size, the average house size over the past 20 years, as rates were so low. So they've made these really, castle-like properties that the people behind them are not keen to buy, not only because they're insanely expensive, but also because they're inefficient, the huge upkeep, all the ongoing costs and taxes and everything. So sure enough, that's the type of market all over the world, the sort of 1.8 million and up market, which is finding a plunge in buying activity and a big jump in supply or inventory.
Yeah, well, there's nothing surprising here, and this was further exacerbated by the U.S. tax code change, which limited the deductibility of state and local taxes, so-called SALT, which also, it didn't cause this. We know this. I think it was the slowdown, the housing slowdown. Danielle probably agree was starting before that, but it certainly picked up the speed. And we've got tax refugees flowing into non-tax states, non-income tax states. Similar, I think. Well, maybe not so in Canada. You don't really have like the low tax provinces. I guess Alberta is the only low tax province. And, like they come for weather, they come for a lot of factors. And I think there's a tipping point where finally this person says, well, I'm paying $150,000 a year, wealthy person, for the privilege of living in New York City. Maybe it's time, I don't need to work as much. I've got savings. I've got retirement. Maybe it's time to flee the state, and I'll come up in the summers. And I think that is a global trend of people fleeing higher tax jurisdictions for lower ones. Everywhere you go, you seem to see it happening.
So the great equalizer, though, I think is going to be higher and higher property taxes, because yes, income people can migrate from state or province to province and try and move around for tax rates, but ultimately the land you own is stuck in the jurisdiction in which it stands. And so we're seeing this that already in states like Texas, as you well know, have very little income tax, but they have very high property tax rates. And I think that's going to be an inclination all over the place, where we're going to see higher and higher fees and taxes attaching to property. Because as we've said, the other, incomes have been flat, tax revenues have been falling for several years, never mind even before an official recession here. And yet expenses and entitlements are going up and up. So even after this 10-year bull run, there was another story in the Wall Street Journal this week about the fact that pension liabilities have compounded much faster than asset prices, even in this incredibly extended cycle from monetary easing and dramatic reinflation in equity prices. The liabilities are compounding faster than the gains. Not only that, but every time you get into a down cycle, of course, the assets plunge and the liabilities stay or increase. So this is the very evaporation of net worth or buffer, so to speak. And, in Canada this week, we got news that our household savings rate is back to 1.1%, Carrie, which is near the low that we had at the all-time bottom in 2005. So we know that households have no savings, very little to absorb any kind of job loss or reduced hours or any life event like illness or marital event or, anything that's common in life is going to hit them with a big shock because of this undersaved, overexposed to risk and, huge indebted position. And that's a common theme throughout the world.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I've got the solution for high property taxes. Everybody just needs to turn your house into an Airbnb, and then you just watch the money pour in. Of course, it's like starting another business, and I know it's kind of silly, but I can't tell you, Danielle, how many people I have met who are now Airbnb hosts who have taken investment properties. One woman I know, she took her own house, basically put a wall down the middle, which it worked for this house, and put in a little kitchenette for the visitors' quarters, and is making $2,500 to $3,500 per month on Airbnb fees. Admittedly, Florida's seasonal. Come May might not be so well, but there's certain location aspects of hers. But I think this is a part of the new economy. I don't want to call it the sharing economy or the gig economy, but it is kind of the gig economy, and you see it all over the place with people. I never take a taxi now, Danielle. I only take an Uber or a Lyft, unless I can't avoid taking a taxi. I think that's where we are heading, the Uberification of the economy, where people do gigs, side hustles, as they call them, whatever it takes to earn some extra income to keep afloat.
Well, I've pointed out on the blog in about the Greenwich home sellers and the Stockholm sellers and all that trend is that the key to this is twofold. The key to the problem with overvalued housing in the world is lower prices across the board, and that's happening. Mm-hmm. Many houses have already been knocked down by half, and that is part of the solution. But the other issue is how to make these too much space that is hugely inefficient as a single family dwelling, how to make it more efficient and productive. And the answer is repurposing it into multi-use properties. And so this trend of making an apartment in one's house or having rental income from one's house is part of the solution. And it is going to be, I think, on the other hand, let's not forget that if people do it over a certain level of revenue, certainly in Canada, you have to charge also our consumption tax.
Yeah,
so if the renter is collecting $30,000 a year or more, they have to charge a 13% consumption tax. So this is another way that governments will increase tax revenue flow, inadvertently, of course, not their idea, but the homeowners. So that, we have an interest in getting tax dollars up. If we're ever going to get ahead of, we have to control our spending, reduce spending, and increase revenue flow in order to get out of these debt holes that we're in.
And actually what you're describing, subdividing properties, subdividing mansions into multifamily housing, it's not really new in New York. And I would venture to say in most larger cities where there were like very wealthy sections of town where you owned a brownstone and you owned what are now small apartment houses, 8, 10, 12, 16 units, they were subdivided from these mansions. You see it all over New York City, brownstones.
Absolutely.
Three-story.
So the Gilded Age in the 20s, when all these mansions were built for single-family dwellings, they were all made over into multi-apartment, multi-condo units. And indeed, we've been through our own Gilded Age in the last decade or so here, Carrie. So it's not surprising that the old solutions are coming back around again as new solutions. So ultimately, it'll have the impact of lowering the cost of shelter, which is essential if we're going to get people back to a healthy savings rate. They have to become get the shelter behind them so they can get on to other goals in life.
Hey, and really, I think families will come back together to live under one roof. When I was a kid, my grandmother lived with us when finances weren't that great. She contributed, and it wasn't unusual to have 4 generations under the same roof. Somehow, through the destruction of the community, the nuclear family. Did I say nuclear? What do I think I am? George W. Bush? I know that I can pronounce it, Danielle. It's nuclear, not nuclear. Anyway, with the destruction of the nuclear family, somehow the generations got split up. I would much rather be living in my kids' house with them, taking care of their kids maybe, than spending my golden years in assisted living or in a nursing home. Man, just give me the lethal injection. I think that there are societal benefits to this de-McMansionification, if I could call it that we don't even know about yet, that are really net positives.
Absolutely. I actually have an apartment in the lower level of our house, Carrie, because it's for all those reasons, knowing that the most attractive properties on the market today, our realtor friends will tell us that having an apartment in your house somewhere is a huge bonus for exactly that reason, whether it's for a nanny, whether it's for 20 or 30 somethings needing to come home and regroup for a while, whether it's for an elderly parent. This is part of making these properties much more functional and efficient, and it's definitely a positive trend. However, for the people that are banking these assets on their balance sheet right now at market values, which were, the norm 2 and 3 years ago, this is quite a shock. And for the people who have over-levered themselves into these properties as the prices drop, in some case 25, 30, 40, 50%, of course, that's going to be a balance sheet shock from which it'll be hard for them to recover without things like bankruptcy.
Yeah, well, that's why the bankruptcy laws exist. And, America and Canada, to some extent as well, land of the second chance. Just because you're down and out. Hey, that kind of brings me to something we don't usually talk about. Tiger Woods. Mm-hmm. Guy's 43. He hadn't had a championship in 11 years. And everybody had written him off as a has-been, as, basically finished. And he never gave up. Wasn't the nicest person. Hopefully, I think he may have learned some humility from all of his troubles, I would hope. I mean, surgeries, medical problems, marital problems, got caught not too far from where I live with a DUI. In fact, I was stopped in that very place for speeding, but I wasn't DUI. But it just shows that no matter how down you might look to others, until you throw in the towel, until you admit that you've lost, you're never lost, right? And
absolutely, I loved that game as everyone was watching. We were actually landing in a plane coming back from Vancouver, and everyone was cheering. It was 2:30 in the afternoon, and I couldn't understand why they knew how it was ending so soon. I didn't realize they'd started early on Sunday due to rain concerns, but the whole plane was cheering, and people were saying, "I knew he could do it. I knew. I hadn't given up hope." And people love a comeback story. But you're right. Hopefully, this time the success will be that much more cherished and hopefully respected. And I think, we're all the same, Carrie. We all make mistakes. But if we can learn and strengthen our decision-making going forward from those mistakes, that is the test. And that's what gives people ultimately greater resilience and strength over time, the extent to which they do that.
Yes, and builds character too. And it's so funny. I hadn't seen a comeback like that since Muhammad Ali regained his championship belt after having it stripped because of his resistance, conscientious objector status during the Vietnam War. And there was books written about it. It turned out it was a whole put-up job. Honestly, he couldn't pass the aptitude test to get into the military, but they changed the test just because Johnson, LBJ, was upset that this guy was getting away with it. And, the guy was not a champion for a lot of years, lost his first major comeback, and then regained the championship. And, there's something so appealing, so visceral about that story because we've all been down. We all managed to come back. And unless you throw in the towel and say you're defeated, you're not. It's only how you define yourself. It doesn't matter if Tiger Woods is back and ever wins another championship golf match, because the fact that he did it after that long a period of time and that many problems to come back, it's just an American story and a human story.
It is. And what I really love these days is things that can't be cheated or gamed or jimmied. Like, golf is a very difficult sport, and you can be rich and you can be poor. It doesn't matter a whit how you look. Nothing matters except the skill and the focus and the commitment to just keep going with it. And I think ultimately, we've been through this period where it looks like easy money wins, where, you can buy your way into everything, you can cheat and steal, and you get away with it. And I think we're into a period here where there's going to be more respect for self-discipline, skill, and actually, just continually doing the right thing. And that's going to be a refreshing thing indeed.
And from your mouth, hope you're right. I feel like you are, though, because, it's an inspiration when you see that type of thing happen. And, when you see many people have triumphed over things far worse than what Tiger Woods went through, losing people, losing everything, but coming back. It's a big difference. In your outlook and how you treat people, how you think about yourself. Very important, because we all come back at some point or another from adversity, and we're that much better for it. Anyway, we got to run now because they're coming to fix my Wi-Fi, my internet service, which has been on the blink since I was away, came back to broken Wi-Fi. But make sure you check out Danielle's site. Of course, jugglingdynamite.com. Ours is financialsurvivalnetwork.com. And find us at our Twitter feed at Kerry Lutz, Facebook page, Financial Survival Network. No matter how you're listening to this, just go subscribe, like, and share. It really helps get out these ideas. Danielle and I have been talking about this for years. It's finally coming to pass. You could have been prepared for it, or at least not surprised by it had you been listening. Anyway, so subscribe, like, and share it. Danielle, we'll catch you in a couple weeks.
Thanks, Carrie.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.